me again, just because I am so excited because I've been working on all of these for the last couple of weeks, and the big canvases I've been finishing up this weekend. That's kind of been my sole focus. Friday, yesterday, and not so much today except for the varnishing. But I wanted to show you the smaller ones in case you haven't seen them in my feed until now. So I also, in addition to all these big ones, which you see behind me, which I just did my little unicorn tour of all the big canvases I'm taking, I have a set of 4 of these 12 by 12 cradled wooden panels I did the ink and watercolor on watercolor paper, and then cut them out and adhered them to the gessoed wood panel, and then I added stars with pearlescent ink. I've got 2 more of those, so this is going to be a grid of 4. So I've got 2 more. And then I have this series of smaller ones. I have a series of 6 that are on these thin wooden panels, which you can see these are thin wooden panels. So these all have the pearlescent stars in the background. So excited. Oh, I'm excited. You don't have to be excited, but I'm obviously excited. So these, I put the pearlescent stars on. This is, hand-drawn, hand watercolored with handmade mineral pigments. They weren't handmade by me, the watercolors weren't. They were made by a woman named Kim Gish. She has an online shop called wildthorn.com, and I just absolutely love her paints. And for me, there's an extra quality of, depth and thought and energy that goes behind it when I'm using, something that was lovingly handcrafted, as well as lovingly handcrafting something myself with them. And then I have a series of 49 of these. So these are smaller compared to the ones that I just showed you. These were on flat wooden or flat panels, mainly because I started out prototyping 4 of these and loved them so much that I wanted to mount some more, and my local print shop only had the thin panels, so I just went for it anyway. But I have a series of 49 of these. And I only have 10 in this little basket next to me, but just so you can see. So they're here, and then I just figured we'd hang them on the cradle. So I've got this latest series, or the latest set, I should say. And my idea was to put these up in a grid so that they're all, spaced evenly apart, sideways and vertically. And then they can make a nice kind of, I don't know, balanced display in my opinion. These unicorns make me so deliriously happy. It's probably ridiculous to outsiders, but for me, I'm super excited. And then there's 2 more in this batch, and then I have, like another 40 some inside of this size. But I'm really excited about having them in the local coffee shop, as I mentioned, because a lot of parents take their kids in there, and so hopefully these will bring joy to adults and kids alike. And yeah, that's it. And my idea with, so the black didn't used to be on these bigger canvases, and once I started doing these, the smaller ones, and then that progressed to these, I felt like I needed something to tie the entire collection together. And so that's why I played around with, just on one, with the Ignite Your Magic, actually. I played around with, well, what if I took black gesso and I went around everything? The reason I didn't do that previously is because if you see how much I have put into the backgrounds of these, like how much depth and detail of that mixed media, each one of those canvases was like hours worth of layering and drying and all kinds of cool stuff. And so the reason that I hadn't tried the black gesso previously was because that all the work that went into them before I put the unicorns on was very precious to me and meant a lot to me, and I didn't want to cover it up. So I was like, but I spent all this time and love and joy and energy, and I don't want to cover up these huge canvases covered with all those beautiful marks. But I realized, once I went ahead and prototyped the black gesso treatment, that it really adds a different kind of impact. And then the stars were a second inspiration, mainly because I was just playing around basically and Once I mounted the watercolor on the board, I thought, well, what if I took these inks and made some stars? And I'm always kind of taking a chance, because whereas some artists will sit down and make studies and studies and studies and studies and kind of like, oh, I'll print out my sketch on, 14 different pieces of paper, and then I'll sort of roughly paint each one to decide how my final piece is going to look. The way that I best create is when I'm just in the flow and I just do it. And the only thing about that is either it works out or it doesn't. With abstract, it's very different in that it pretty much always works out, because you can keep adding layers and layers and layers. But once I introduce the more designy aspects, like in terms of layout, I didn't plan this layout out beforehand. I didn't say, okay, the unicorn's going to be in this pose, he's going to take up this much room, then I'm going to add this and this. What I do is I just sit down and I find like a horse reference, just any horse photo that appeals to me that I find online. And I start with paint. I don't even sketch it out beforehand. I just start sketching in paint, the outline of the unicorn, and it turns out however it turns out. And then I'm kind of like, well, how much space do I have around him? Do I want to add some sort of mantra? That's how, source love and free your soul and ignite magic came about. And those are actually kind of carried over from my Dancing Unicorn Oracle deck, which if you haven't seen it, you can go to my website, which is magicwithmelly.com, and choose the navigation item that's like Oracle decks or something, and you can find a link to my magical Dancing Unicorn Oracle deck, which also has energy work infused into each of the cards. So it's a very, very special deck for me and for those who I know have received the deck and really, really love it. So anyway, so the mantra is like source love and free your soul, which free your soul is back here. So like this one, looks like it's backwards. But those were a carryover from my Dancing Unicorn Oracle deck. And I still have originals of those available, by the way, if you want watercolor and ink original with the mantra on it. So those each had some sort of like mantra, like Nurture Innocence is one of my favorites. It's a drawing of a mother horse and a colt next to each other. That's one of my favorites. And so when I started playing around with adding the unicorns to my larger canvases, I just kind of naturally carried that through and giving each one a saying. And if you've seen my Animals of Inspiration artwork, which is I have a coloring book, I have a second Animals of Inspiration coloring book that I have 3 more illustrations to do. And then I'm going to publish it through CreateSpace. So I also need to design a cover, which may be similar to the first cover, just to have some consistency, continuity, and maybe not. Haven't decided yet. Anyway, so the Animals of Inspiration also have some sort of mantra with each animal illustration. And so, the Dancing Unicorn Oracle deck, and then the Animals of Inspiration, which also became an Oracle deck. Again, you can go to magicwithmelly.com, go under the Oracle navigation to find more about that. But that's why I sort of carried that over into the larger canvases, and then I realized that it doesn't really need it. And so these were already started. The new ones are, I'm just going to get up and show you again. I never actually showed you. These were the new ones where I was playing around with just having the unicorn and then adding the sort of cloud shape. And these smaller ones came after those larger ones that I showed you back here a little bit earlier. So this was my first experiment. I was like, I have these huge canvases, and again, you could see how much depth and detail are in that piece of artwork before I even added the unicorn to it. So again, these are very precious to me. There's a lot of energy and love and joy that I've put into each one, whether or not the unicorn's on it. And so that is something special. And then again, in this one, you can see, how much is going on in that background before I even went ahead and did the unicorn and the clouds and the stars and all of that. So I'm gonna flip you around again. So anyway, that is a brief preview, and yeah, I'm just really excited for these to be out in the world and to have a little bit more exposure, because I've been posting them on social media, but I know everybody's overwhelmed with social media these days, and I know that you know, people aren't seeing posts as frequently, and so I haven't been getting engagement with my work. So that leads me, you know, again, the internet has kind of been the place for those of us in more remote places or those of us who've moved around a lot to be able to showcase our work. And now the online world is not working for us in that way. And so it's kind of like, where do I go from here? And if I've got all this stuff that I'm so passionate about sharing and it's not getting out in the world, I'm putting it out in the world, but it's not getting seen, then, you know, what does that mean? Where do I go from here? What do I do with it other than just find a new rental again, since we have to move out of this place, and maybe just have a unicorn room or a Melly room where I just hang up all of my artwork and it covers every inch of the entire room. I don't know. But hey, at least I'm doing something that brings me joy, right? It doesn't matter if it brings anybody else joy, it brings me joy, and that's the most important part. And it lets my son laugh at me because he thinks it's funny that his mother, who is not a child, is so excited about unicorns and magic. So anyway, thanks for indulging me and sharing my excitement, and yeah, if any unicorn art calls to you, feel free to inquire and make an offer. I can always reserve stuff while it's hanging up in the shop as well. So, all right, have a lovely Sunday. Bye.